All right, everybody. I wasn't going to do a video on this just because we are going to cover it on the Canadian Investor Podcast, but I've had so many requests to kind of provide my insight on this short report on GoEasy Limited, so I am going to provide some insight. Now, the one thing I just want to let people know, I have not looked at this report in depth. I'm kind of done a bit of basic overview of this. I know the general consensus as to why this short report has been written and what exactly they're accusing GoEasy of doing. So I'll go over that. But I mean, the one main strategy of these short reports, as you can tell, is to absolutely overwhelm people with information. So what I'm kind of going to do, I'm going to work through this report. I'm going to, cut out particular sections of this video that I don't really find of any value, and I'm kind of going to go over it in real time to kind of give you an idea as to what is going on. As always, everybody, I appreciate the likes, the subscribes, and the comments. Once we hit 21,000 subscribers, we are going to be giving away some premium subscriptions to subscribers, and we do so by picking random comments from videos. So drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think is going on with this report, but let's get into it. Now, the one thing about this short report, I do not know if any of this information is factually accurate. And the reason I say this is a lot of this stuff they are accusing GoEasy of doing has not been proven, and they're taking a lot of the information from former employees. This is a very, very common tactic with short selling. There is an idea that they can kind of target disgruntled or former employees who will kind of provide some information as to what is going on in regards to the company. So a lot of the stuff, and I'll go over what they say in this video, is alarming. Like, I don't want to give the impression that it is not alarming, because if GoEasy is doing this type of stuff, yes, this is very, very bad. I do not have any authority to state as to whether or not they're doing this at all. I mean, my only experience with GoEasy is with a former tenant I had that I used to rent my apartment to, or my condo to, when I owned it. They got into a bit of trouble with GoEasy. The company, like GoEasy, hounded me, the landlord, extensively to get them to pay the loan. And then when I talked to the tenant, they had talked about this payment skip option that was put in place. So I know this does exist, and the accusations made against GoEasy are that they are getting a little bit too lenient when it comes to this. And I mean, if I'm going to be straight out honest, this short report is suggesting manipulation and burying delinquencies utilizing situations like this. So if you want me to completely sum up this short report, at least the core aspect of it in a single, couple sentences, they are saying that GoEasy is allowing people who cannot pay their loans to skip their payments up to a maximum of 4 times a year. And if a borrower is able to just pay a partial amount of a monthly payment, they are not counting that as a skip, and they are also not counting that as a delinquent payment. And in addition to this, some former employees have mentioned even if a loan is in deep trouble, they will rewrite the loan at the end of the year and kind of relieve the borrower of the past interest owed, and they'll keep that loan in the good books when effectively the borrower has been in default for the better part of a year. So GoEasy's reported delinquency rates are curiously low given its median borrower profile. I have said this numerous times, and Simone has said this numerous times on the podcast. Now, this is not necessarily an indication of any sort of fraudulent activity. I mean, GoEasy could really just be a better underwriter than a lot of these prime borrowers. Now, GoEasy has stable delinquency rates while peers are consistently going up in a relatively poor environment. This is where we get into that element of the skipped payments, kind of the booking of loans that in the grand scheme of things are delinquent, but they're kind of utilizing systems inside the company to keep them not delinquent. So how does GoEasy get such low delinquency rates? By not calling delinquent loans delinquent. So that is the main portion. Exploding interest receivables betrays exploding hidden delinquencies. And I'll go over that chart. This is probably one of the most, interesting concepts of this short report. But I'll go over that in a bit. You're definitely going to want to look at that because it is very interesting. And how did GoEasy get charge-offs to come down by changing the definition of a charge-off. And just overall, they effectively say there is $300 million of catch-up credit losses that will devastate earnings. So if we get into the report, effectively what the company is saying, GoEasy reports a net charge-off rate of 8 to 9%. I've talked about that lots. It kind of hovers within that range, and they believe the true net charge-off rate is more like 15%. So this is effectively because of those skipped payments. So when we continue to come down here, we will get to the one portion I want to talk about on the skipped payments. So how does GoEasy get such low delinquency rates? By not calling delinquent accounts delinquent. So this is from a former GoEasy manager. And what you'll see is a lot of these are from competitors who obviously have some sort of incentive to smear GoEasy, and there's also former managers who they've, remained anonymous and also don't work for the company anymore for any particular type of reason. So I take these with a massive, massive grain of salt, but you do need to understand what they're saying if you want to kind of dig into the justifications of this short report. So this former manager said, I had so many tools I could use to avoid the inevitable default versus any other bank or financial institution I've worked with, or even any other subprime lender. Do we write it off now or just keep kicking the can? And they wanted us to kick the can. So when we get to the meat and potatoes of this, we think the three major techniques being used by GoEasy to suppress delinquencies are these payment skips. And again, I can confirm that these payment skips do exist. This is factual. I have spoke to somebody involved with a bad loan at GoEasy who is able to kind of push that out by skipping payments. So they allow payment skips or extensions, allowing a non-paying borrower to delay this month's payment, but continuing to report them as current in the financial statements. So partial payments, allowing a borrower to skip 49% of the month's installments payment, but to continue to report them as current. And rewrites, this is when they start the borrower over from scratch, they waive the interest that they've owed on the delinquent loan, and they classify the loan as current. Now, subprime lenders, they deal with, to put it bluntly, terrible borrowers, people who cannot qualify at prime banks. They're potentially rebuilding their credit in, the situation where they've gotten in trouble in the past, or they're just bad borrowers. A lot of these clients for these companies are bad borrowers. We do have to accept that. So there is a lot of situations where they work with borrowers. There's going to be a lot of defaults at companies like this, so they do have to be flexible in this regard. But what the short report is saying is that they are not flexible about reporting delinquencies. So this kicking the can strategy, and eventually this is going to be a house of cards that is going to fall, is the main core idea of this short report. So this is an interesting aspect here, again, from a former employee, is the 51% payment to keep a loan up to date. So they could skip you 1 month, and then if you just pay 51% of an installment, the next month you're still in check, and then the next month you can't pay it, so they'll skip you again, and then you can pay a little bit the next month, and then eventually you go bankrupt. So that's kind of what this employee is saying is happening. So you've got someone over the past 90 days has paid only 1/2 of a monthly interest payment, and the person is not considered delinquent. GoEasy does not mark them as delinquent. So the employee confirms this. Yes, they're considered fully up to date. We wouldn't report this as an overdue payment on any financial statement. Now, the other thing in terms of rewriting, and again, I want to reiterate, I have no idea if any of this is true, but effectively, the former employee is saying rewriting was allowed once per year per account. So let's say you pay monthly, and I've already done your extension 4 times, and I've already done partial interest payments 4 times. Then I can just take your loan and rewrite it and start from scratch. We would waive the overdue interest, but sometimes you could get an exception to do it a second time in 1 year if you had good reason. So the short seller asked the employee, what is the most generous situation? And they said, you pay monthly, then you skip 4 payments a year, then you do 4 partial payments a year, then we rewrite the whole loan, and then you're up to date again. So the former employee mentioned that they see a lot of extensions. Everyone is using max extensions. That's probably a little dramatic. Maybe half of the borrowers use partial payment extension, and maybe 25% got their loans rewritten within the year. Now, again, if these numbers are true, this is dramatic. There is no question. Now, the other alarming thing here is they asked, in the worst case situation, when would a loan that is delinquent be recognized as delinquent. So the former employee effectively said 24 months. So if you failed to pay today, they could mess around with your loan in terms of deferred payments, in terms of partial payments, in terms of rewriting the loan. They could mess around that loan. They could mess around with that loan for 2 years. So 730 days before it actually got booked as delinquent. Now, the same former employee said, I've seen accounts that have had 32 weekly payments, 42 skipped payments, and on them they have been doing this for 3 years. And they had mentioned sometimes you get a miracle, but in 80% of the case, it's going to charge off. So the main core idea here is that GoEasy is effectively going to need to charge all these loans off eventually. Now we have the 24 month situation, and then we have sometimes a situation where they're doing this for 3 years. So we're talking about loans in 2022, 2023, 2024 that are eventually, again, house of cards situation, are eventually all going to default. Now, if we look to it from just an objective standpoint, this seems absurd to me. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's not true. But the books are audited at all times. I can't imagine an auditor actually letting a company like GoEasy get away with something like this for any extended period of time. Again, I don't really know how this process works. So I don't know what the auditors would look into, how often they would look into them, but getting away with this seems absolutely crazy to me. So this is where it starts to get interesting. So we start getting into the numbers reported by GoEasy and using them to estimate just how much delinquency suppression is happening. So when we come down here, we can see interest income from consumer loans. Interest receivable, from consumer loans, which is the interest from the loans they have not got yet. So it's gone up quite a bit. And if we come down to this chart and we look at interest receivable as a percent of quarterly interest income, so when we look back to 2021, the lows were at 12%, and now we're ticking up to 42%. So effectively what this is saying, interest receivable as a percent of quarterly interest income, this is showing how much of quarterly interest income is still unpaid at the end of each quarter. So if it's 10%, that means only 10% of the quarter's interest revenue hasn't been collected yet. If it's 40%, that means nearly half of the quarter's reported interest revenue is tied up in receivables, which would be, cash you don't have in your hand, but you're expected to get soon. So this is effectively saying that a higher percentage of interest income is being booked, but is not yet being collected in cash. I mean, jumping from 17% historically to 40% is material. There is absolutely no question. It signals customers are taking longer to pay, and the company is extending more credit and not collecting as fast. And if we look to this chart here, the one interesting thing is, why has GoEasy's gross loans increased by, let's just say, 5x, whereas interest receivable has increased by nearly 10x. This is probably the biggest eye-opener of this short report for me, and is one that has definitely piqued my interest the most. Now, why would this happen in theory to this short report? Well, it comes from the skipped payments. It comes from, only partially paying half of your payments, whereas GoEasy will be booking that entire interest expense on the loan. So you get into a situation where interest receivable increases because people are not paying their loans, and you're booking that quarterly interest income. So this is where the gap is deviating, and this is probably the most damning thing. And again, I'm not saying accurate thing, but this is the most damning thing inside of this whole short report, in my opinion. Now, the other interesting thing here is we have the interest receivable increasing, but we have total past due rate, their delinquency rate actually decreasing. They have reported lower delinquencies for quite some time now, which, again, I'm not suggesting any sort of fraud or anything, but in this current economy, you can color me shocked that this does keep going down. Now, am I a person who automatically assumes that the company is doing some sort of fraudulent activity to get it down? No, but it is interesting to me, I will say that this is going down. Now, they do encourage investors to ask the company themselves, what would your delinquency rate be if you added all borrowers who were behind on their contractual payments and only declared non-delinquent today because of borrower support? So again, I don't know if GoEasy even declares that this is how they structure their loans and their delinquency rates, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Now, this is probably one of the most interesting portions of this report. They have modified what they view as a delinquent loan. So back in 2023, we can see their annual report here. And what you'll notice in this second line here, unsecured customer balances that are delinquent greater than 90 days and secured customer loan balances that are delinquent greater than 180 days are written off against the allowance for loan losses. Fast forward to the 2024 annual report, and it says unsecured customer loan balances, yada, 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 same thing. But then it says where no further collection measures are deemed practical are written off against allowances for loan losses. So this is a change here. So what they are telling you is prior, they wrote them off when they were delinquent by 90 days or 180 days in the case of a secured loan. But now they're saying that they're only going to write them off where no further collection measures are deemed practicable, which would be those skip payments, partial monthly payments. Those would probably, and again, I can't guarantee this is what the company means by no further collection measures, but I am going to guess that this is what they mean. So they will no longer put a loan in delinquency if they're still trying to work with the borrower. Now, I have no idea who this short seller is. I've never even heard of them before the Go Easy report, but they have done fairly well in terms of short selling results. Now, what is my overall opinion on this? I cannot tell you whether or not any of this is true. I have no idea. The one thing I will say is these short reports, they fill you with information. I mean, look at all this. They do fill you with a ton of information. They tend to overwhelm and scare retail investors into selling their shares. They make a lot of bold claims from former employees unnamed former employees. If the accusations were technically correct in this short report, obviously it would be devastating for a company like Go Easy. I do not know if they are true. Again, I know a lot of people will kind of watch this video looking for guidance as to what to do and what to make of this report. I do not know the methods of subprime lenders good enough to know if everybody in the industry is doing this or if it is just Go Easy. And I don't even know if Go Easy is actually doing what this short report is saying. I simply do not know. I just wanted to give a video today to kind of drop some insights into what they are being accused of, and you can do your own research, figure out if a lot of this is viable to you, whether it's reasonable, and from there you can kind of make a decision. The one thing I will say, Go Easy has been a very strong performer in terms of subprime lenders for many, many years. Would I argue that maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle? If I were to guess, probably. The one thing that is very interesting right now is Go Easy hasn't really come out and, said anything on this short report. Whenever you get a lot of these in the United States, they often have rebuttals from the companies very quickly, often the same day. They are really on top of this. Go Easy has not commented on this yet, which again, I'm not saying indicates any sort of troubles, but it's definitely something that I'm going to be very interested in the company commenting on, because inevitably they are going to have to comment on this, and it's going to be a very interesting conversation they're going to have. And the one thing I will say is a lot of these short sellers, they target low liquidity, kind of small to mid cap stocks. We've seen it with Dollarama. We've seen it with Shopify. We've seen it with Canadian Tire, Brookfield Infrastructure, Manulife Financial, WSP Global, GFL, Environmental. Not a lot of them work out. The vast majority of them don't. I mean, the one I would argue that did work out very well would be Lightspeed. That company ended up getting shorted. The short report was effectively true, and the company ended up tanking. So it's very hard to kind of judge whether or not these are accurate. The one thing I will say is we got to hear from the company, and we just haven't heard from them yet. So everybody, that's it for the video. Hope you liked it. Head down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I will probably put out another video when the company does comment on this, kind of providing my commentary on that. But for this video, I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what GoEasy is being accused of doing. I don't know if it's accurate whatsoever. I'm just kind of highlighting what they are being accused of because this report can get pretty confusing for a lot of people. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment, let me know if you want more content like this, and we'll see you next time for more great Canadian content.